The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I just want to take a second and talk about that opener because I used to talk about it all the time and then we've kind of gotten used to it and I don't talk about it as much, but I just want to reiterate that that entire opener was created by individuals who identify as being neurodivergent, neurodiverse, on the spectrum, autistic, different words, different people, but the music, the animation, the concept, the entire execution, editing, all of it was all done by folks who identify that way, and they were all paid. And I love that. I think that that's really important to note on both ends. First of all, I wish that we had a budget that was like 1,000,000 times bigger, because we would have done more. It's a very short, it's a podcast and that podcasts are supposed to be shorter. But I'm very proud of the fact that we had that opportunity. We sought that opportunity and we made sure that they all got paid. We did a show about it where we had a bunch of not everybody, because it was a team of people. I think there were 3 people that did the music, and I think it was 2 or 3 people that did the animation and the editing and the whole thing, the illustration. And we had several of them join us on the show to talk about that. But I just wanted to point that out. Saw it today and was like, got to talk about that again because it's meaningful to me and I hope it is to you guys too. We're really excited that you're here with us this morning. We got a great guest who's going to be with us, a young man who's very inspirational. Kadin McElwain is going to be joining us in just about 25 minutes. He is a college student and really making a difference in his life on a day-to-day basis and feeling very passionately about a mission that he's on to spread awareness about the kinds of things that he's doing and that others on the spectrum are doing as well. So he's going to be joining us in just a little while, and I'm very excited about that. But first, before we get to that, let's take care of some business and remind you that we're premiering the show live to you this morning. We're on a whole bunch of different sites. We're live on Facebook, on YouTube, and I believe on Twitter, X, whatever they're calling themselves right now. I can't keep up. I'm trying with the Instagram thing. You guys can tell I'm just not good at it. But we hope that you guys are finding us wherever you need to find us. Our fabulous Chris Desmond is showing you some of the different places where you can view the show. And of course, the show is available as a podcast. Remember that you can go to our YouTube channel and you can check out 14 years of past episodes, and it's video and picture. And you can still comment. I regularly go in and check the comments on videos that were done, over a decade ago. So you can still write in on all of those shows. It's all fine. But also the shows are available on podcasts, traditional podcast platforms, wherever you can download podcasts for free. We try to be there for you. It is an important value for me and for everybody involved in the show and in the network that we are able to bring you this information for free. Let me tell you, we've been doing this for 14 years and from time to time we brought people in and said, take a look, what can we be doing better? Because there's always things we can be doing better. And I'll be honest with you, many times people have come in and said, you're crazy, you should be charging people, and then you can have a studio that's bigger. And we have always said no. That we feel that it's important that you guys get the information for free. Now, that's meant that we've had to make some compromises, right? And one of the things that you'll notice when you listen in podcast is that the feed is, there will be advertisements that break in. Just like when you're watching network television, right? And we hope that you'll embrace that because that is in fact why it is free to you. That's why we are able to give it to you for free. Now, over the years, some of you have said, okay, but I would rather pay a little bit and get it for free. We've made that possible for you. All you have to do is go to glow.fm/autism-live. It's $5 a month. And when you do that, you get literally everything that we do at the Autism Network, and you get it ad-free. send it to you however you want it sent to you. It's $5 a month, and you get everything on Autism Live, and you also get everything on Ask Dr. Doreen, which is a pretty sweet deal if you are wanting to have it with no ads. But for those of you who are listening in ads, that's all good too. Please enjoy and embrace those ads. That's my advice on that. So we hope that you're finding the information. We also hope that you're sharing and liking and reviewing and following and subscribing, because that helps us to be on the air too. If you've ever thought, oh, what can I do to help these folks? They answered, Dr. Doreen answered my question. What can I do to support this so that other people can find this? Those are the ways. You can like, you can share, you can review, you can subscribe, you can follow. All of those things help us to stay on the air. So please take the opportunity to do that. So before we get to our guest, we do jargon of the day around here on a regular basis. And the whole point of this is to make it so that all of us are able to take these terms. Like if you're watching us on YouTube right now, you see that today's jargon of the day is the three-term contingency. This is not a political thing. This is not somebody running for president. This has nothing to do with that. This is a pivotal concept. And I don't know about you, but when my son was first diagnosed, was I overwhelmed. I just felt like somebody dropped me into a marathon race about 1.5 miles in, where everybody had already started. And I was like, first of all, where am I? Where do I need to run to? What do I need to know? Can someone catch me up? And everybody I would run up to would talk to me and use terms that it might as well have been a language that, it might have been Greek, Latin, German, something I didn't understand, right? And it was frustrating. If you're going to somebody and saying, can you please help me? And they start saying, well, the three-term contingency, I'm like, slow your roll. Talk to me like I'm new here, because I am. I will tell you that I was so mad for at least 2 years about that and other things. I spent a couple of years just being ticked off. But this was one of the things on the top of the list, because I was like, if I'm here and I need help, talk to me like a person. I didn't get the same degree as you. Don't hold that against my child. Come on, help me out here, right? And then I started to learn the jargon terms, and then I kind of went to the dark side for a while and started using these terms all the time as if everybody knew them all the time. It's important to me to do the jargon of the day so that you guys hear these terms and hear that you are not like some ridiculous person who, for not knowing this. I think the vast majority of people, if you said three-term contingency, would say, I have no idea what you're talking about. So if that's you today, you're okay. You're totally okay. However, I think if you hear what I'm about to talk about, what the three-term contingency is, you might find, as I did, this was the first game changer. This was the thing that put everything on its ear for me, caused me to look at things in different ways, and started us on a path to better days where my son made so much progress. It's important. That's why we do this. Now we give you 2 definitions. Used to be because I would make fun of one. Now it's because there's nuance, right? So we still want you to get the 2. So let's dive in. Why is Shannon so excited about this three-term contingency thing? Okay, so the three-term contingency, also referred to as the ABCs of behavior, which is antecedent, behavior, consequence, illustrates how behavior is elicited by the environment and how the consequences of behavior can affect its future occurrence. Okay. This comes to us, of course, from ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis, Weebly.com. Okay, and I love some people who do ABA, right? But this is them kind of getting jargony. When I look at it and I go, elicited by the environment and how the consequences of behavior can affect its future occurrence, I'm still scratching my head and going, I don't get that. And what does that have to do with my 3-year-old who's laying on the kitchen floor hitting his head? Somebody explain this to me, right? Let's go on to our other definition and see if we can't get closer, but I'm not going to leave you hanging. I'm going to explain this to you. The three-term contingency, often abbreviated as ABC, stands for antecedent, behavior, and consequence. Okay, we got that from the last one. It must be important. It's a model used to analyze and, more importantly, understand the relationship between behavior and the environment. Okay, so we know that the environment has something to do with this, but how does that translate to my 3-year-old on the floor banging his head on the kitchen floor? All right, I've got in my hand here a piece of paper. I'm going to low tech this for you right now, right? And I've taken the piece of paper and I have folded it into 3 lengthwise, right? And then across the top of the paper, I wrote A, B, C. Okay, because anybody can do this. Everybody has a piece of paper and some sort of writing utensil. By the way, there are apps, you can do this. There are all kinds of places you can do this. Doesn't have to be on a piece of paper, but I like a visual representation, right? And for years, I walked around with one of these in my pocket. Why? Because I remember the first time, back in the day when my son was diagnosed and we went through such a tussle about, were we going to do ABA? Were we not going to do ABA? Because like a lot of you, I was told that it was not going to be nice to my son, that my son was going to be belittled, that he was going to be forced to comply, all of this stuff, which, by the way, for good ABA, not true. But I believed it, and maybe you do too, right? And there are people that are doing that kind of ABA. It's not like it's false. There are people who are using ABA that way. It's not how it's intended to be used. Let me say that. So, and we signed up for ABA, but I was still a little on the fence. And then I had to go to a presentation where they talked specifically about this. Now, I didn't know what an antecedent was. If you do, you're ahead of me, right? But I didn't know what an antecedent was. And an antecedent is just what happened before. So really what you're looking at is what happened before the behavior and then what happened as a result of the behavior. Antecedent, behavior, consequence. Now, here's sort of this geeky, cool, fun thing, that everything that's living in the universe adheres to this kind of a thing. This is not an autism thing. This is a living thing. By the way, plants adhere to antecedent, behavior, consequence. You don't believe me? Take your house plant and put it in the shade. So that's the antecedent. You've moved it to a place where there's not as much sun. Now the plant is going to engage in a behavior. Can we guess what the behavior is? The plant is going to grow towards the sun. And the consequence is that they're going to get closer to the sun through their behavior. Plants, ABC. People do ABC. You have been doing series of ABCs this entire morning before you got ready to be here. The example I always use is that every day there comes a time at some point in the morning or the evening where you walk into a room and turn on the light, or you might be seated in the room doing something and you get up and you go turn on the light. That is an ABC. What's the antecedent? What happened before? You either walked into the room and couldn't see, or you were sitting in the room and it was getting harder to see. And so you engaged in a behavior that you do over and over and over, which is that you got up and you flipped the light switch. And the consequence was that light flooded the room and you were able to see. And when a behavior is successful, we do it more and more because we're like, well, it worked, so I'm going to do it more and more. So at some point, you've gotten used to walking into a room and flicking the switch. You know how when you move to a new house or a new apartment, and there's that wonky period of time where you don't know where the light switch is and everything feels kind of off? It's because you've so gotten used to this 3-term contingency and you're used to the payoff. I walk in, I put my hand there, the light comes on, I get the light. And life is good when you understand the 3-term contingency and it's successful. And that is when we get into a habit, because this happened, I did this, and it worked. Habit, I'm going to do it again and again and again. That's true of all of us. All of us. Guess who else it's true of? Our kiddos on the autism spectrum. They also engage in this, and here's where this really changed it for me, because I remember looking at my son's behavior through the lens of people who didn't know autism, right? You guys all know what I'm talking about. My son would do something that I didn't understand. So I was like, I don't understand, which brings up fear. But other people looked at it and labeled it weird or odd or peculiar or unnecessary, right? And This happens all the time. But learning about the ABC taught me what my son is doing is for a reason. There's nothing weird. There's nothing odd. There's nothing unnecessary. He is engaging in these behaviors. But, sometimes we do things that aren't productive for us, and we'll do them again and again and again because we don't know what else to do. That's true of me. That's true of you. That's true of everybody in the universe. But what the Three Term Contingency does is it gives us a place to start. Now, I just want to pause for a second and say that as parents, we tend to be all about this B thing, the behavior. Oh, my son did this, my daughter did this. We're all about the behavior. And it's common for us to want to control behavior. That, we want to know that we can take our child out to the street and they're not going to run out into the street, right? We all want that. We want to control that behavior. And we have this mistaken notion that we can control the behavior of our children. It's not true. I know. Everybody's like, what? What did she just say? It's really rare that we can control behavior, and it's not good. It's not good when we're actually trying to control behavior. This is not what ABA is about. It's not about, saying I can control the behavior. It's so much smarter than that. It's so much more elegant than that. I used to say, what am I supposed to do for my son when he doesn't do what I ask him to do? Am I supposed to duct tape him to the wall to keep him safe? Right? Because I couldn't control the behavior. Well, ABA says, let's note what the behavior is, but let's not focus on controlling the behavior. Let's look at the antecedent and the consequence and see what we can't change. This is this thing about the environment, that the environment is very much a part of the behavior. If it never gets dark, you never have to turn on the lights, right? That would change that behavior. Now, when you're at a grocery store and you walk down the aisle, the lights in the freezer section come on as you're walking. Nobody's turning those lights on. They just come on automatically. Maybe in your house or in the place that you work, you walk in the bathroom that we have here, you walk in and the light automatically comes on. So we're being taught we no longer have to flip the switch. The antecedent has changed, right? We can do this with our kiddos. The example that I always give is when I went to the doctor's office with my son, and it was early days. I didn't know all this, right? We're sitting in the doctor's office. It's taking forever. The TV is on the fritz, and I'm nervous because of what the doctor's appointment is about. My son is there, and he's got nothing to do, nothing to look at, nothing. So what does he start to do? The behavior is he starts to kick the chair. And there is a consequence for that, right? In the C category, I look at him and I go, stop that. Well, now he's got something to do, right? I am like Netflix for him right now because my reaction, he can see the stress on my face. This is at least interesting. Not only that, the blue-haired lady across the way, I know I'm a blue-haired lady now too, but across the way, she's giving him the stink eye. This is good theater, my friends. He now has something to do, but it's not stopping kicking the chair. The more he kicks the chair, the more attention he gets from me and the blue-haired lady. And so I'm freaking out and going, stop that. And at one point I even reached down and put my hand on his leg and say, don't do that, right? Is he going to stop doing that? No, because what was the antecedent? The antecedent was that he was super bored, which is a normal human feeling. And what do we do when we're bored? We try to do something to entertain ourselves or busy ourselves or whatever. So the behavior he chose was banging his foot on the chair. And what was the consequence? He got a bunch of attention and he was no longer bored. So let's predict, is he going to stop doing that or is he going to keep doing that? He's going to keep doing it. He absolutely is going to keep doing it. And guess what? That's intelligent and rational. And when they explained this to me and I got it as a parent, I went, oh, my child is intelligent and rational. I just need to smarten up. I need to change antecedents and consequences to support him. So for instance, at the doctor's office, what did I do? I started carrying around, my mom made me this really cool bag that was a bunch of zippers sewn together. And each zipper had its own pocket where I could put toys in there. So wherever, I always had it in my purse. I used to carry a huge purse. And I had it, and it was a small bag, but in each pocket was a different thing. At that point in time, he was super into wind-up toys, and there were wind-up toys in them, and there was silly putty, and eventually there were little mini figure Legos in there, but there were things that, probably would take about 2 minutes to occupy his time. But here's the rule that we set up, that you can ask for one zipper at a time, and we were working on zippers, so he would unzip it himself. He would take the toy out. He could play with that toy. And when he was done with that toy, the rule was he had to bring the toy back to me. We would put it back in. He would zip it closed, and then he could pick whichever zipper he wanted to open next. So he's not bored. Guess what didn't happen again? He didn't hit his foot on the chair. It never happened again because he wasn't bored. And guess what else? During that time, we were working on his skill of doing a zipper. We were working on, putting one toy away before you take another toy out. And we could wait for any restaurant. We could be at any doctor's office. And now suddenly I have the control that I previously wanted as a parent, but didn't have before, because I'm mindful of the antecedent. Now, sometimes we modify the consequence, right? That if, because sometimes I don't have control over the antecedent, sometimes I have control over the consequence. Now, this example that I gave you, I could have schooled my face to not react when he was kicking the chair, so he just didn't get the attention for it. But the problem is the blue-haired lady across the way, she's not going to adhere to that. So that would be a tough situation. Like sometimes when we're in classrooms and the child is doing something that's clearly for attention, and people go, we want to do a consequence strategy. Well, that's all very well and good, but I can't get this group of kids to not react when he does that. And when the group of kids start to laugh, whoo, our kids go, oh, this works. I want to do it again. So the 3-term contingency actually gives you a place where you can start. You manipulate things in the environment to help your child to want to engage in the behavior that is what is acceptable in this particular realm. Now, I know I can hear people going, well, what does that mean? What does acceptable mean? Obviously, we don't want property destruction, right? And if somebody gets bored enough and they're getting enough attention for property destruction, they're going to do that. We don't want to do that. And instead of focusing on the behavior and going, stop doing that, which is just something that takes away somebody's self-esteem and gives attention, which means it keeps happening, instead, we make it so that they don't need to do that behavior. Now, it's different. I'm going to say this when, depending on, because we're not really talking about, for every behavior, there's a function, right? Now, sometimes the function is something internal that it feels good, and that's where we get into a lot of the stimming and the sensory stuff. That, for instance, our children rocking, right? That still has an A, a B, and a C, right? But it isn't so much about, you wouldn't give them a zipper bag for that, because the reason why they're rocking becomes important. And I always try to remember to say this to all of us. Your children are doing things because either they need to do them or they're doing them because that's the only way that they can get their needs met. Can we just hear that for a minute? Your child is doing it for a reason, and the reason is either that they need to or that they have no other way to get it met. So what do? We can teach them things to do to get their needs met, right? And we can also replace behaviors if they're doing something that's hurting themselves. Like for the child who's peeling their skin off of their hands, there's always still an A, a B, and a C for it, right? We just need to delve in and see what is that. Maybe their skin is itching and the behavior is that they're peeling the skin. But here's what the consequence is. Maybe the itching stops, but they're bleeding, right? That's a behavior that we would absolutely want to intervene in, but we wouldn't stand there and say, stop doing that. Or there are some people who are like, we'll just put gloves on their hands so that they can't get at it. But what about the need? What about the need? We need to make sure that we know what's causing the need. Now, sometimes the antecedent might be that maybe they're having an allergic reaction to something and we stop eating that. Or maybe there's allergy medicine. Like, we need to take into consideration the environment. This behavior is not happening in a vacuum. And we really want expert eyes to be looking at all the different pieces for it. But, if it's something like hand flapping, we're going to look at it about what is the reason why the child is engaging in it. And sometimes we hear from kiddos that they'll say, well, because I'm bored. Well, then we go back to what do we do for bored? But in other times, it's not because they're bored, because that's their way of expressing happiness. We wouldn't want to take that away, right? There's no need to. For some people, it's because I see colors, right? So we give them other ways to see colors. And we only intervene when the behavior is causing a problem for the individual. If you're intervening because the behavior is causing a problem for you, I need you to think about that and why. Why is it causing a problem for you? And let's solve that. But for behavior, if the child is only ever stimming and we need them to learn how to write their name, then that's a behavior we want to look at to see how can we get this need met another way that doesn't prevent them from writing. I hope you can see the difference. But three-term contingency, oh my goodness. When I started to understand this as a parent, it absolutely led to better days. So I hope that you guys will check this out. Talk about this with your ABA provider. You can carry this around. We tell parents, the first time we notice really is when the behavior is happening. And so you write down, what did the behavior look like? And then what's freshest in your mind is what was the consequence for it. And then you kind of have to be a detective and go back in time and think, okay, what happened right before? They call this taking ABC data. And if you keep a running journal of this and note the time, first of all, you'll learn things that you didn't know before, but then take this to an ABA expert and say, okay, my child's engaging in this behavior. Here's the ABC data on it. Oh, they will think you are so smart and you will get so much accomplished and you'll come up with a behavior intervention plan like that and you'll get to better days. So that is my discussion about three-term contingency. But we've got this amazing guest that's here waiting to talk to us. Of course, I'm talking about Kadin McElwain. So don't go anywhere. He's absolutely so inspirational. You guys are going to want to hear from him. We're going to come back with him right after these messages. Welcome back. As promised, we have a really inspirational guest who's joining us right now. Kadin McElwain describes himself as an autistic college student, writer, and activist on a mission to raise as much awareness about autism with his story as possible. Throughout his life, he was told he wouldn't amount to anything because he had autism. Can you imagine? But thanks to a strong work ethic, he has been able to prove all the naysayers wrong. We're so excited to welcome Kadin to the show. Kadin, welcome to Autism Live.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks for having me.
We're excited to have you here. So if it's okay with you, let's back up a little bit and talk about your life story and tell us what you're comfortable sharing with us. Who is Kadin?
Yeah, absolutely. Pretty much what you just read, autistic college student, writer, and activist with one mission, and that's to bring attention to this cause of autism awareness, because I think it's a cause not often taken seriously enough in today's society. I was diagnosed when I was 2 years old, and starting with the very doctor that diagnosed me, people questioned my capabilities. The doctor who diagnosed me even said, don't expect trade college for him, expect trade school for him at least, then a group home. But my parents weren't going to have that, and I wasn't going to have that. So my parents invested a lot of time and energy into me, occupational therapy, physical therapy, ABA therapy, overall being there, not taking anyone's stuff or doubt for me, because they knew what I was capable of. And I got that work ethic from them, the work ethic that I have. Then COVID happened and everything went online. I really pushed myself a lot around that time, and I found that I could concentrate better online than anywhere else in a public school setting. No need to worry about bullying. No need to worry about your IEPs or the like being used as a pawn, which I'll get into later. And it's just you and a computer. Thanks to COVID, I was able to graduate early on Valentine's Day of 2022. Then I transitioned into college, and this is where the advocacy work began. It started with a class project in 2022. The assignment was to think of a way to help the community and act upon it. So my group and I set up a GoFundMe for the Autism Society of America, and we ended up raising over $1,000 for it. We had a bunch of very notable people donate to it, including Joe Frazier Jr. and a lot of boxers I was in contact with. And we won a contest with the project. But I saw, as typical with my generation, the TikTok generation, my group wasn't really into it, if that makes sense. They only wanted to do the assignment to get the grade and the prize money we got. And I saw that autism wasn't a common cause taken seriously enough and not given enough attention. So I figured, if no one else is taking this seriously, I might as well do so. So that class project led to all kinds of opportunities for me. Setting up fundraisers, which I have another one in the works currently, date to be determined for one of my favorite organizations here in Lake County, the Lake County Special Needs Birthday Club. Meeting with politicians to discuss autism, appearing on platforms like this, and overall, doing what I do, inspiring people by going to college and doing all these things that people don't normally associate with autism.
I love that, Kadin. I love the expression "doing what I'm doing." Doing what I do. I think that's absolutely amazing. And I know you've been in the media many times in your local hometown with events that you've done, times when you've been reaching out into the community to help other people. I imagine you're getting a name for yourself, a name that's quite respectable. I have tons and tons of questions, but I want to preface it by saying I want you to tell me if a question is too sensitive or too personal. You don't have to answer the questions that I ask, but I'm going to ask them and then you tell me I'd rather not answer that and we'll move on. How's that? Is that a deal?
Yeah, this all sounds perfect.
Okay. So when you were diagnosed at 2, you probably don't have memories of that. Am I correct?
Not many, but all I know, and I always find this funny, is that it was right after I got the smallpox vaccination.
Okay.
That, of course, didn't cause the autism. That was just a coincidence. I always find it funny because that conspiracy theory is out there.
Yes, it is. But at the time that you were diagnosed, have your parents ever talked to you about like what kinds of things that they were seeing that led them to take you to get the diagnosis? Like, were you talking and you lost language, or were you just not talking at all? What kinds of things? And I don't know, maybe it's okay for you to say, I don't know. But I'm wondering what led them to think that you would benefit from being seen by somebody who could diagnose.
Honestly, I have no idea. I really don't. But it was most likely that I didn't talk until I was 7 years old.
Okay.
I was diagnosed at 2, like I said. So it was most likely I wasn't verbal, and I most likely wasn't looking people in the eye and that kind of thing.
So that's interesting. So you weren't talking until you were 7. So do you have memories of being like 5 and 6 years old and how frustrating it was when you couldn't verbally communicate? Do you have memories of that?
Not specific memories, but I do remember it being extremely frustrating to not be able to verbalize exactly what I wanted when I wanted it.
Yeah. I think that's a typical experience for any of us, right? That if you can't get your needs met, it's frustrating. But look at you now talking like a champ. But you mentioned that your parents did a lot of therapies. From your point of view, not from your parents' point of view, from your point of view, what do you think helped you?
Oh, man.
I know I'm asking all the tough questions, Kadin.
Yeah, I know.
It's okay to say I don't know. That's okay.
Yeah. All right. I would say that my parents definitely helped me. They have been my biggest advocate, biggest supporter, even when I don't deserve it. Just today, after we got into a discussion about me creating some family drama, because I was feeling sorry for myself for some reason. I can't really say what specifically because it's personal. They still went and bought all my textbooks for me for this upcoming semester because we had an agreement that if I get all A's and B's, which I did this last semester, I have 4 consecutive dean's lists right now.
Nice.
They would buy my textbooks for me. And I think that truly shows their dedication.
Yeah. Well, I love hearing that. That's such a wonderful thing to hear, that your parents are there and in your corner. I have a feeling that they would say that you always deserve it. We all get to have a not good day, right? But we deserve the love and the support of the people around us. You don't, we always say in our household that nobody's perfect 100% of the time, because that just isn't possible. But we still get to love each other. And it sounds like your parents are really doing that, and that you're feeling that. And I love that. At what point do you remember thinking, I want to go to college?
Man, I think everyone goes to college at some point. I just think it's not as accessible. Okay. But I would say I always wanted to go to college. Probably since middle and high school, since that's when you really have to think about your future.
Yeah. Can I tell you that in my family, when I was growing up, there was this doctor who was really popular. He has nothing to do with Star Trek, but his name was Dr. Spock. Nothing to do with Star Trek. He was just a person who gave advice to parents. And I was the middle child. My sister was born. And then Dr. Spock came out, and my parents were reading Dr. Spock. And Dr. Spock said, tell your children when you go to college. Just start adding that sentence with every child and talk to them about that. So with me, my parents said that, well, when you go to college. And I grew up just like you. I was like, everybody goes to college. Everybody wants to go to college. They didn't do it with my siblings. And eventually my siblings went to college, but it was not part of their, I'm going to graduate high school and go to college. So I love that was your mindset, Kadin. I love that you were like, well, of course I'm going to college. And I think that that's how all of our kids should be raised. Well, of course you're going to go to college. And then if you decide not to, that's a choice too. But I would love it if everybody felt like you do. Everybody goes to college, and that's a thing that you're going to do. I imagine it wasn't easy for you. Kent State's a really good school. Were there challenges in terms of applying and getting in, or was it all smooth sailing for you?
Well, there were definitely some challenges that I didn't understand about college, so particularly with the transitioning from living in a dorm. But eventually I got into it, and I honestly love it, and I'm looking forward to this upcoming semester. Yeah. But not with the application process in general, especially since this was around COVID time when I started applying for colleges, and they were lenient about test scores back then. Yeah. Although I was able to pass my ACTs properly to get into the college I wanted.
And I loved what you said, because, so often, so much of what we talk about with COVID is, COVID was hard, COVID was terrible, and people got sick and people died and all these things. But there were some good things that we learned in COVID. And it sounds like you learned that if you take all of the other elements out, that the work was easier for you. Is that essentially, because I'm just paraphrasing what you were saying, it was actually easier for you online to learn. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely. I could concentrate better. I didn't have to worry about any of the social aspects of school that I despised.
Yeah.
And funny story to completely backtrack, but when I was in middle school, my IEP was actually cut off completely without my parents' knowledge or consent, just because the school couldn't tell I had autism. So my parents fought long and hard to get that back. But they wrote to every single autism organization in Tennessee, which is where the school was located, and a state senator. because they knew I needed that IEP. And that kind of thing is actually illegal to pull
Yeah.
in the United States. Like, schools can't do that. So going back to what we were talking about, with online school, I didn't have to worry about my IEP being used as a pawn that could be taken away anytime the school wanted. Didn't have to worry about the social stuff. It was just me and my academics, which is what schools should be.
Amen to that. But schools aren't anymore. There's a whole lot that happens at school. And this is an important point that we've talked about before in many different conversations on this show, that sometimes it's important to take somebody outside the social realm if you really want to be working on academics and want them to succeed. And for other families, the academics, they're not as concerned about, but they're concerned about the social. But there's pressure in school to be able to do both. And that's hard. That's really, really hard. So what a wonderful example you've given us, Kadin, of how it can be made easier. But now you're going to college, and college is vastly different than high school. And not only are you going to college, you're going to college in another state, living in the dorms. Was that a little intimidating for you to start?
At first it was, but it's not as much as it is now. And the whole family moved out here to Ohio to support me and be closer to family. So it definitely wasn't intimidating. And I'm just as focused on my academics in college as I was in high school. I don't go to the rats. I don't go to parties. I don't go to clubs, because I know that I'm paying hundreds upon thousands of dollars of student loan debts to go to school. So I shouldn't waste it on partying, doing drugs, and doing stuff that college students think is okay to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I would argue that clubs are not a bad idea, because then you meet people with like interests. But I agree with you about the rest of it. I love that your family moved to Ohio to be close. So how, don't give us exact amount, but are you like a half an hour away when you go to school, or how far away are you?
About an hour or so, just outside of Akron, I believe.
That's amazing. So what are you studying at Kent State?
I'm studying public relations right now. Initially, I was a computer science major, an IT major, but that just wasn't something I was passionate about.
Okay.
I was passionate about music and politics and advocacy work, and PR seemed like the most realistic way to get into that.
Was it after?
The more I'm
sorry. Go ahead, finish your thought.
The more I learn about it, the more I'm learning to love it for way more than just being able to be in the career field I want to be in.
And so did that thought process come about because of that assignment that you worked on with fellow students?
Yeah, I think that was part of it, but it was mostly because I wanted to work initially in music or politics.
Got it.
But there was no realistic way to get into those fields.
Well, PR is a great way to get into those fields, gotta say. So you're starting your junior year, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, it gets very, my personal opinion, and I used to teach college, is that it gets so much more interesting when you're a junior because more of your classes are in your major. So I think you're going to have an amazing time. And I know it's early, but have you given any thought to what your dream job is when you graduate?
It's definitely early, but not too early to start thinking about my future. But I'm thinking I want to work in a nonprofit for autism. I know about it so well. I actually have it. And I think some of these organizations could use the perspective of an individual with high functioning autism who's out here doing these amazing things.
Yes. And you're doing absolutely amazing things. Do you have a sense of, again, it's early, but do you have a sense of where in the world you want to live? Are you pretty much like Ohio now?
Yeah, I love Ohio. And ideally, I want to stay in Painesville to be closer to family and stick with my routine and familiarity. But the problem is, there's not that many PR firms in a small town like Painesville. So I'm working on getting my license eventually to broaden my horizons a bit and possibly live in a city or something.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you, a lot of PR people work long distance now. They don't all live in cities anymore. So they do a lot of stuff online because so much of it is digital. Some people live in New York, some people live in LA, but there are many PR people that are doing things just on their computer, and that's how they're helping represent people and represent brands. So, who knows? By the time you graduate, that may be very much the thing. Wonderful. So tell me a little bit about, do you have siblings? Do you have brothers and sisters?
Yes, ma'am. One older sister and 4 younger siblings, 2 brothers and 2 sisters.
Wow. So 6 of you all together?
Yes, ma'am.
How did everybody else feel with the decision to move to Ohio?
Well, my big sister's 21, so she's in Montana currently. She's going to college in New York, but she lives in Montana now.
Okay.
But my siblings didn't mind. They're younger than me, way younger than me. I'm 20. They're, I believe, 9, 8, 7, and 6. So they were definitely fine and open with it.
And do you enjoy being a big brother?
I definitely do.
Yeah. And they look up to you?
Yes. I'm one of the sweetest big brothers,
I'll bet
I must
you
say.
are.
A lot of older siblings will just tell their siblings to leave them alone and be mean and rude to them, but that's not me at all.
I love that. I love that. How is it living in the dorm? Are you with a roommate situation or do you have your own room?
Well, I'm going to be with a roommate this semester. Okay. I'm hoping they're a bit nicer, because last time I was with a roommate, they were vaping and smoking so much I couldn't even be in the dorms unless it was to sleep and get whatever stuff I needed for the day.
Yeah.
Which is a shame, because I should be able to study in my room without any distractions.
Thank you. I agree with that. Do you have support at Kent State, people that you can go to deal with issues like that?
Well, in the sense of the vaping issue, nothing was done. I filed multiple reports, but all they did was tell me to talk to the roommate, knowing dang well I don't do well with social stuff and those types of situations. Yeah. But academic-wise, I have testing accommodations through the CAP Center, extended time on tests, and a private room to take the tests in, that kind of thing. But the problem I have is I had to show proof of diagnosis to get those accommodations. And it's personally my opinion that once you're diagnosed, you should never be questioned about that again.
Yeah. We live in an interesting world, though, that keeps changing the litmus test for that. So this is so important for families to hear, because if your child's going to college, we did a show recently talking about the difference between 504s and IEPs. And some people were under the misconception that if you have a 504 plan in your high school, that it automatically transfers to the college. You can have a 504 plan at the college, but it's not the one that you had at high school. You're pretty much starting from scratch. But you are getting some support. You have some accommodations, but obviously you are showing everybody by repeatedly being on the dean's list that you're a valued student on this campus and completely able to do the work. But I'm sure I don't know a single college student that doesn't encounter some challenges. So I don't want to gloss over it and make it sound like it's all smooth sailing. You're at college. You're overcoming challenges on a daily basis, I'm sure.
Yes, I definitely am, especially with academics, because getting that degree is pretty much your future. And one semester, it was super tough for me. I didn't know how to maintain myself mentally. So this past year, I've been really focused on improving my physical and mental health to help me be a better student. I've been going to therapy, going to the gym, eating better. So I'm hoping to keep up that lifestyle I developed into the new year and beyond.
Well, you're quite the role model. And as you said in your email to us, you really want to raise awareness as much as possible about autism through your story, and helping people to see the challenges that you have overcome. Now, you do things regularly in your community. I got to see a lot of articles and clips of things that you did. But you're doing a lot of programs like this, which we appreciate that you're here with us. Have you started doing public speaking where you stand in front of a group of people and you deliver a speech?
Yeah, like I said, I've met with politicians and they invited me to their meetings and board meetings to discuss my life story and autism awareness. That was actually something I did as part of a class project that I talked about earlier. But eventually, I'm hoping to do a TED Talk and something big for the autism community and get on a really big stage.
I hope that you do. And I have to thank you for talking to the politicians because, I've always said that if every politician had the opportunity to spend 2 days with either someone on the spectrum or to be in a house where a child has been diagnosed with autism, we would have a much easier time getting support and legislation passed that supports the autism community. So it's wonderful that you're getting in front of them, getting in their face, talking to them, and hopefully that will make some differences in their minds as legislation is put in front of them of what they want to back and what they don't want to back. Anybody particularly you want to give a shout out to that you as a person on the spectrum has that you spent time with them and you feel like they're really listening?
I would say one good friend I have that I've partnered with for a lot of my stuff I've done for Lake County is Reservoir Michael Zurin. He's the president of the Lake County Special Needs Birthday Club, an organization of which I regularly support. And he's been a very vocal supporter of my advocacy work since day one of us meeting.
Okay, wonderful. Now, I've heard about this birthday club before. Tell our audience what they do.
Yeah, absolutely. The Lake County Special Needs Birthday Club is an organization here in Lake County that pretty much throws very big Make-A-Wish style birthday parties for those with special needs in the community.
And do you, how did that get started? Such a great idea.
I really don't know the origin story of that organization. I'll have to ask Treasurer Zern next time I see him. But it was most likely one birthday party. It started out small, and then it became this big thing.
Yeah, it's so great. I don't know why we don't have it everywhere, but it's really, it sets a bar for other towns. It's such a great way of having people come together. Well, I really enjoy you taking the time to be with us, Kadin. If people want to know more about you, do you have a website that we can send them to?
Yeah, absolutely. You can follow me on Facebook at Kadin Ronald, KADINRONALD. Follow me on Instagram at 73 posts here, all one word. And read any of my written works by typing in my actual name, Kadin McElwain, KADINMCELWAIN.
Okay. Tell us the Instagram one more time.
73 posts here, all one word.
73 post here. Is that what you're saying? Like 73, yes, the number, post, P-O-S-T, here, H-E-R-E, correct?
One S after the T in posts.
Okay, so 73 post here. But it.
Yes, ma'am.
Wonderful. So I'm not big on Instagram. I really can't figure it out. I'm trying. But everybody else will know how to get there, Kadin. And so to see what you're doing. And are you posting regularly?
Yeah, I've been trying to on Facebook particularly, but Instagram is more where I do memes and stuff like that. Okay. But eventually I'm hoping to set up an account for my advocacy work.
Wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful. Okay. Well, I am hoping all the best things for you. Is there I know you said you're very interested in the music industry. Is there a dream music performer that you'd like to work with and represent for PR?
I I would honestly say Post Malone. He's been a favorite artist of mine recently, or anyone in the country music industry. I've been listening to a lot of that stuff recently.
Fantastic. Well, shout out to Post Malone. Look at this fabulous budding public relations person that in a couple of years might be ready for you to hire. So there we go. But Kadin, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. Thank you for reaching out to us to tell us your story. It's been such a delight to have you here. Please give my best to your parents. What amazing people that have been supporting you and to have raised such a polite and intelligent son.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. All right. You take care.
All right. How well?
Thank you.
Hey.
What an inspirational young man. For all of those of you who have written in and said, you know, for individuals that are on the spectrum that are older, where are they? What are they doing? And I frequently say to you, they're busy leading their lives, right? But there's a perfect example. College student at Kent State on the honors list. My goodness. Are there any of us that wouldn't be proud of that as a parent? I don't think so. I think we would all be proud of that. So what an incredible young man, and making a difference in the world day by day as he is on his mission. So truly wonderful. I want to thank all of you for being here today and joining us for this wonderful young man. And can't wait to see you guys for our upcoming shows. We've got a bunch of really cool stuff coming up, you guys, not the least of which is Andy Bondi is going to be with us on the show. He is the original inventor of the PEX, Picture Exchange communication system, and truly one of the nicest people on the face of the planet. And later on in August, we had Jed Baker scheduled to be on the show in July, and we had to move the date because he had a conflict. But we are going to have Dr. Jed Baker on again. And for those of you guys who don't remember, please do yourself a favor and order a couple of Dr. Baker's books. He's got one that's on social skills that it just recently came out, a new edition. It's the 25th anniversary edition. Great book. And my personal favorite is overcoming anxiety in teens. I think that's the title of it. What a great book. And I will tell you that entire book is not for individuals who are on the spectrum, but there is a specific chapter that explains how to use the rest of the stuff in the book for teenagers that are on the autism spectrum. It is a great book. You need to check it out. I think it's like $11 on Facebook, or not on Facebook, on Amazon. That's the one I want. So definitely check them out. But those people, along with many others, are going to be joining us on the show in the coming days and weeks. So make sure that you're tuning in. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now. If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much. See you next time.